Welcome to the Bleeding Edge with AL and VS Code. Hey, I'm Eric, and last week we saw that suddenly you couldn't debug. If you install VS Code version 1.78, debugging kind of stopped working. Sometimes you could sort of debug, but you couldn't really debug. And the official were saying, hey, we know this is wrong, there's something wrong, downgrade to version 1.77 instead, and you can go do your things. Which is a perfectly valid answer, perhaps even a sensible one, but there is another version. Instead of going backwards, you have the option of going forward. And Visual Studio Code has what they know. Oh, there's a turtle. So if I go to code.visualstudio.com, they have something called the Insider Edition, sorry. And this is, for early adopters and but side-by-side install. So you can have another VS Code installed, completely independent of the one you have. So instead of downgrading the version you have to 1.77, you might as well try to install the next version of VS Code. And you can get that, and if you download and install this, you will see, if you see there down here in my taskbar, I have the purple one. That's Visual Studio, the big one. I don't know, the non-code version. The blue is the one we know, and then there's a green one, and the green one is the Insider version. And I have opened. Looks like that's the Simple Object Designer. But you can see that this kind of looks like just VS Code, but if I go and look at about, well, we can see that this is version 1.79 Insider, and we can see it on the green icon. So remember that side by side, completely independent. That also means that the apps that you have or extensions that you have installed are perhaps the same, perhaps not the same. And one of the things that we can do, now we're in this, and if you can hear my dog, that's probably the Amazon guy. She's trying to eat now. You see that with the AL language, we also have the option of switching not to the Insider version, because that's not the language the Business Central group is using. They use the word pre-release. And since I'm now in this side-by-side isolated version, I can go and say switch to this thing, and let me reload here. So I can go look at this, and now I have version 12 of the compiler installed. I still have my blue icon here with all the stuff, and normally I can make sure that I don't break anything, but I can try stuff in here. One of the, if you have followed the channel, I suggest you do, maybe even become a subscriber. You have seen me express my the opposite of satisfaction about having to re-authenticate whenever I'm working with cloud sandboxes. Look here, as part of this pre-release, improved token handling for Azure AD authentication scenarios with multiple workspaces open at the same time. It turned out that because I had a tendency to open 5, 7, I don't know how many VS Codes, one for that customer, another for that customer, one for one app and another app, and maybe one app I had multiple components, whatever it was, and authenticated to different spaces. There was a bug that messed up authentication. So because I was always working in multiple things at the same time, or a switch between them even, then authentication got mixed up, and I had a very productive session at Directions with the compiler guys. Really appreciate that. We isolated the scenario, and now it's fixed, and I get a chance in here in the pre-release version to test whether this works. So how about I hit F5 and see if I can deploy the Simple Object Designer somewhere without having to authenticate. Let me deploy to that sandbox. And I am. And if you notice this, because I have looked at this way too much, so we can see that authenticated as ericandhugo.com in tenant. So this message is different than it used to be, with a line saying trying to authenticate with this and then authenticated with it. So clearly something happened, and this works. Not to say that this is a test that I'm sure the bug is fixed, but I have pretty high confidence in that the bug is fixed. So this is pretty cool. And what I could do also, of course, is if I worked, when we get into preview sandbox release, or if you're on the access to the daily builds from Microsoft, you can now also go in and say, well, this app is now on runtime 12. That is allowed in this one. I'm not on runtime 12 because some cloud tenants are still behind. So I am actually stuck on 9.2 right now for some reason, or not for some reason, for that reason. Anyway, you should never use the pre-release AL thing to create app files that you send to production or you send to app source and so on. But you can, and you can try it out, and this is still side by side. So whatever happens over in the blue one stays in the blue one, and whatever happens in the green one stays in the green one. So that was a way to get to the bleeding edge of both VS Code and AL. If you have a need for more AL hacking, you know where to find it, right here. And go check this video out. It's a good one. I'll see you there. Take care. Bye.